Atlantis is more than a lost continent. It is an epoch in the evolution of humanity. And at the Bulgarian pyramids, we witness the transition from Lemuria to Atlantis in the art set in stone by the pyramid builders. Talking to stones in Bulgaria and listening to the memories of Atlantis. Subscribe below to learn more about the cosmic origins of humanity. There are at least two distinct epochs of stonemaking at the pyramids of Bulgaria. The first epoch is associated with Lemuria, for which we have a dedicated documentary. The link is below. The second epoch is associated with the early period of Atlantis. As we see in Rozovets and Begliktash, for example, the Lemurian stones are bigger and have a rough shape. They look like solidified magma. The large building blocks that form the pyramids can also be attributed to the Lemurian epoch. By comparison, Atlantean stones are smaller, better finished, and have specific recognizable geometric shapes. In Rozovets, we see perfectly rounded megaliths that are smaller in size. They look like hanging fruit inclined towards the sun, and they are positioned on top of large granite slabs from the earlier Lemurian epoch. In Dolny Glavanak, the base stones that form the pyramid are large slabs of granite from the Lemurian epoch. The smaller standing stones from the Atlantean period are lined up in a circle. They look like a powwow of petrified elders. Quartz, for example, is used during both Lemurian and Atlantean epochs. During the Lemurian epoch, it is used on a much larger scale. Large lines form grids that underpin extensive megalithic sites. During the Atlantean epoch, the use of quartz is smaller in scale and more precise. In Banja and Sokolica, we find standing stones with a quartz diagonal line that reminds us of the golden ratio, the divine proportion that reflects cosmic harmony on Earth. In Koprivstica, we find rounded spheres and smaller oval-shaped megaliths that were reconverted during communism as tombstones. In Skum Sale, a rock formation from the Lemurian epoch is capped by a well-rounded oval megalith from the later Atlantean epoch. It is located near a three-dimensional triangular megalith that has a horseshoe-shaped trough on top. In Rozovets, we find compressed granite in the distinct form of a rhombus. And in Banja, there is a rhombus-shaped granite rock. The precision of these designs is specific to the Atlantean epoch. Overall, Atlantean stones are smaller and better finished, with precise geometric shapes, and they are fewer in number. Positioned at prominent locations, they are like one-off decorative pieces, and they are always on top of the bigger and rough-shaped Lemurian stones. The two distinct epochs of stone art can be explained by the environment, the level of human development, and the techniques used. Conditions on Earth evolved from the time of the early Lemurians through to the first Atlanteans in the direction of a greater densification of matter. There is a link to the video on Lemuria below. Matter, including plants, minerals, and stone, became firmer. Lemurians had been able to transform the nature around them like gods, with their thoughts and emotions. Atlanteans needed to use an external source of energy. Rudolf Steiner, Cosmic Memory, Prehistory of Earth and Man. The Atlanteans could control what one calls the life force. As today one extracts the energy of heat from coal and transforms it into motive power for our means of locomotion, the Atlanteans knew how to put the germinal energy of organisms into the service of their technology. Think of a kernel of seed grain. In this, an energy lies dormant. This energy causes the stalk to sprout from the kernel. Nature can awaken this energy that reposes in the seed. Modern man cannot do it at will. He must bury the seed in the ground and leave the awakening to the forces of nature. The Atlantean could do something else. He knew how one can change the energy of a pile of grain into technical power, just as modern man can change the heat energy of a pile of coal into such power. The Atlantean could harness the germinal energy in a pile of grain to transform nature, including stone. But he now needed an external source of energy because matter had become harder. Whilst the Lemurian did not have a fully formed, hard shell of a body, the Atlantean developed a hard skeleton, and this had two implications. The Atlantean became isolated from nature and his environment. As a result, he no longer understood the processes of nature intuitively and could no longer influence nature like a god. Additionally, the Atlantean lost the Lemurian's ability to increase his strength at will. All in all, the densification of matter, the loss of intuitive understanding of nature, and the inability to increase his own strength at will reduced the Atlantean to produce smaller megaliths. On the other hand, the Atlantean gained from the densification of matter by having a harder body. He developed external organs of perception, such as eyes, hands, ears, to enjoy better external sensory organs. Thus, he developed clearer sight, whilst the Lemurian had lived in constant blurriness. As a result, the Atlantean could create finer megaliths like the standing stone of Banya, with a precisely positioned line of quartz that reflects the golden ratio. With better eyes and sight and hands and touch, the early Atlantean was able to mold and compress granite into precise shapes, like the 3D triangle of Skumsale and the square platform in Buzovgrad. New faculties were acquired as old ones were lost. What thus was one within with respect to the faculty of thought was lost with respect to the control of external natural forces. One need only realize that each time a new faculty develops in an organism, an old faculty loses power and acuteness. As man became more entangled in matter, he lost his connection to the spiritual world. He lost some godlike powers to gain more earthbound faculties. One of the consequences of this development was the appearance of memory. They, the Atlanteans, had a highly developed memory. This memory was one of their most prominent mental faculties. Early Atlanteans developed an external memory that was connected to locations. See the documentary on giants linked below. It explains why we find single standing stones in specific locations at megalithic sites. They are the memory of giants set in granite and the precursors to modern-day statues. As we saw, there is a distinction between Lemurian stones and Atlantean ones at the pyramids of Bulgaria. But there are also many stones that straddle both epochs. The standing stones of Rosovets and the column of Skumsale are just some examples of megaliths that seem to straddle both epochs. They have characteristics that belong to both Lemurian and Atlantean techniques. The standing stones of Rosovets are made from one piece of granite that seems to have been molded like clay into a teardrop shape. Each megalith stands at over 5 meters high and around 1.8 meters wide. Compared to the rough, magma-like plinths on which they stand, they look more Atlantean in shape and technique. Yet, their humongous size reminds us of Lemurian stones. The tetrahedron in Rosovets is a massive three-dimensional triangle that has a hypotenuse of 22 meters and is made from several megaliths, themselves triangular with a base of 6 meters. It has both the massive bulky shape of the late Lemurian epoch, and it stands on the side of a steep hill slope, and it has the precise geometric form at both the level of the individual pieces and in its totality. In Skumsale, a bulky megalith is 2 meters tall and around 3 meters wide. It has the distinct rough finishing of the late Lemurian epoch and 2 clear triangular shapes that can be associated with the early Atlantean epoch. Another example in Skumsale is the roughly shaped 3-dimensional triangular boulder with 3 incisions that look early Atlantean. Soon we will have a documentary on number 3 at the Pyramids of Bulgaria. Click to subscribe and be notified. These are just some examples of megaliths that have Lemurian and Atlantean characteristics. If we look at the location of Atlantean stones and count them, we notice that they are much fewer than the Lemurian ones, and most are located in the Middle Mountain. It is possible that after the volcanic catastrophes that destroyed Lemuria, there was a reduction in the overall human population. Some survivors that made up the first Atlantean population in the lands of Bulgaria were probably few in number. On the ground, the erosion patterns north in the Central Balkan, as well as southeast in the Rhodope, seem to be telling us about megafloods up to 900 meters high over a long period of time. Maybe the Middle Mountain survived as an island in a sea of huge and prolonged natural catastrophes. Eventually, the early Atlanteans would have moved on from the lands of Bulgaria further west to start the new phase of humanity's evolution on the continent of Atlantis. What is most important for us is that the stones of the pyramids tell us what happened in the lands of Bulgaria. Regions like the Middle Mountain were used by both Lemurians and Atlanteans. Bulgaria was a bridge, a transition point in both space and time between these two stages in the evolution of humanity. And Rudolf Steiner's reading of the Akasha Chronicle confirms this seamless transition from Lemuria to Atlantis. The transition from late Lemurian to early Atlantean took place over a very long period of time. One must not imagine that one subrace immediately disappears when a new one develops. Each one may maintain itself for a long period of time, while others are developing beside it. Thus, there are always populations which show different stages of development living beside each other on Earth. And the stones of the Bulgarian pyramids confirm the knowledge kept in the Akasha Chronicle regarding the transition from Lemuria to Atlantis. Lemuria was characterized by fire, whilst Atlantis was characterized by water. The first perished in the flames of massive volcanic eruptions that were the result of uncontrolled luciferic impulses. Atlantis eventually perished under the waves of the ocean, submerged by overwhelming Ahrimanic influences. The story of a seamless transition from Lemuria to Atlantis, from fire to water, from Lucifer to Ahriman, has been told for millennia in the form of an image, the hexagram. It represents the triangle of fire rising, crossing the triangle of water descending. Humanity passed through both extremes before finding the middle ground in the next phase of its journey during the post-Atlantean epoch. You are welcome to help us decipher the message held in the stones by participating in the Bulgaria Pyramid Project. There is a link to our website in the description below. To learn more about the ancient origins of humanity through the stones of the pyramids of Bulgaria, please like and subscribe.